First, every voice matters. Secondly, it's also about enhancing decision making. Thirdly, language accessibility. And finally, it's also about customer-centric approach.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us again. My name is Wesley Sutliff and I'm a product manager for Televic here in the US. Today is another really good presentation. I'm excited to be sharing this with all of you because we've been working very closely with the courtrooms within the US, whether it be at the federal level, the state level, county, all over. And today really is just a fairly straightforward presentation from us explaining the challenges that we have heard from all of you who are working within the court space and the solutions that we're putting forward. So we want the chance today to share that, it's not just that we're building a better microphone, but we're really building a better audio foundation for justice. So today we're going to have the 30 minutes or so. I did want to let you know that there's a survey that you should be seeing. Please do take an opportunity either now or after to fill that out because you will get a chance to win a gift card. And then for those of you who haven't seen our other presentations, I did want to remind everyone that if you go to televic.com/conference and go under the support tab for webinars, you can see this one after we've posted. Maybe you've gone there already, but please do check out all of the other webinars we've done. There's lots of really good content from not only myself, but my colleagues here at Televic. Okay, let's jump right in with these everyday courtroom challenges that we have seen. I'm sure you've experienced these as well. We're going to be focusing on the audio, obviously. It's the poor intelligibility that can happen, not just that your recordings are at risk, the transcriptions and the record ultimately, but now that we go, and we'll see this here in a moment, we've kind of expanded upon what the courtroom audio system has to do. But sticking with just the simple basics, if you can't hear each other within the room, if you can't hear what the witness is saying, this puts the whole session at risk. So you have poor intelligibility. If you're trying to get too much gain and you're running into feedback, you're getting those squeals and squelches. Again, this impacts your ability to hear. And then the other side, not just audio, but we're hearing also as resources are stretched very thin. This is not about skill set or ability. It's just pure amount of time and geographic location. Sometimes the technicians, they're forced to try and cover such a huge geographic area. It can be quite challenging to ensure that the systems are running optimally. And then on the other side, from the technician also supporting are the court reporters. And again, we're not saying limitation in their skill or ability or their desire to do their role. No, we're talking about, again, they as a resource being stretched thin, so much demand, and with limited supply, court reporters need need tools that are going to be able to help them do their role as well. And of course, these are only getting tougher now that that hybrid hearings are essentially the norm. We worked closely and still do with the National Center for State Courts on their hybrid hearing initiative, which came after the 2020 crisis. And honestly, building the tools to allow these courtrooms to become hybrid, to make sure that everyone within the proceedings can not only hear, but also be heard, and then see and be seen. So again, we'll focus on the audio, but just the extra need of the video component draws a lot of budget, draws a lot of resources. It's quite technical. It can be quite complicated. We want to make sure that those extra challenges aren't taking away from the core aspect of the record, which is the audio, being able to capture what people have said. And because now we're going hybrid, it just compounds all of the previous challenges because, again, just things become more sophisticated. Again, you have the same limited resources, potentially same limited budget. So how can you ensure that you're overcoming these obstacles? That's what we're going to focus on today. And then I want to take a moment because if you don't know who Televic is, you might be wondering, well, why am I talking about courtrooms? Why are we getting deep into the challenges of courtrooms? Who's Televic to speak about this? I want to say that we're very happy to be celebrating at the time of this recording 80 years of creating better understanding, and that's really it. Our mission statement is about creating better understanding. So we started with these large institutions. They have multiple languages. We're working with interpreters. It's very formal, and you have these big spaces, lots and lots of microphones. But our goal always was to ensure that no matter how many people were in the room, that everyone was able to hear and be heard. And particularly, we had to make sure that we were giving the highest quality audio to the interpreters. The interpreters had to be able to clearly understand what was being said so that they could do their role, which was to interpret to another language so that others would be able to understand. And that's something that I'll speak more about, is that through line of providing clear, intelligible audio so that the most critical players within the meeting could do their role. In this case, it would be the interpreters and court reporters. But then as we moved into that hybrid space, we found that our tools that we had developed for these big formal institutions could also be used in an informal way. We had to adapt our technology to be used in a different way, but it was always towards the goal of creating better understanding. And that's why as we moved from those big, huge spaces, state houses, international organizations, we knew that we had the right tools, but how could we adjust them so that they were the right solution for courtrooms? So first off, some of you may not know what it is that we're talking about. If I say conference system or discussion system, or what we've really been hearing is working well is if we say at-seat audio. What do I mean by all of those things? What does Televic actually do? We manufacture these solutions, this hardware and a software component to make them operate, and we deliver at-seat audio. So this is the device. It is a tabletop unit, and it has the stem microphone. It's putting the microphone element right by your mouth where you're speaking, so it can capture what you're saying clearly. But it also has this onboard loudspeaker. This is really important when you move to a hybrid environment because I'm not just trying to capture and record what you're saying within the proceedings for the record. But because we have remote participants who are joining from outside of the space, I need to be able to hear them within the room. So yes, this onboard speaker will allow me to hear remote participants, but it also allows me to hear the people who are in the room in a much more natural way. So we say at-seat audio because it's designed for the person who's in the seat. So it's your personal listening experience rather than just trying to fill sound for the room. And the one other thing I'll mention there is on the side of the device, there is a headphone jack. Now, I'll speak later about this. We'll go back to interpretation, which is our roots, but that headphone jack can do a lot of different things. We can route audio to that headphone jack that is different than the audio we're routing to the loudspeaker. That's going to let us do all kinds of things, but it can do assisted listening, or it could be a different language that's being sent. That can come from an in-room interpreter, or so on and so forth. There's more. I'm getting ahead of myself. But this device, this is at-seat audio. This is what Televic provides. And I want to talk about how we have those challenges for the courtrooms and how Televic is addressing those, making sure that we can create better understanding and keep that record clean for the court reporter. Okay, so I talked about how we started off with these big formal meetings. And if you are familiar with our space of product category, you may know that it's very formal. It's about requesting to speak and then being approved, and you're on the floor, and who are you, are you queuing up and so on. And it's all these button presses, and it's really, really sophisticated and formal. But that's not how a courtroom operates. Courtroom, we need to be on the record. We need to be capturing what people are saying with some caveats I'll talk about later. But what we needed to do was ensure that we could have basically all mics active. You see there on the bullet point, hands-free mode. So smart audio and control is really this breakthrough. We accomplished this several years ago. We've been in 80, we're hitting 80 years, but it was probably only after 75 years that we were able to really open up the technology and make critical changes to meet the needs of courtrooms and then lots of other verticals as well. But courtrooms in particular, because we need to give the granularity of the control for audio and then the functionality. And I want to talk about what that means. So, because the goal of the smart audio and control is allowing the signal that we're capturing and reproducing to flow through the systems within a courtroom. And there's a couple different ways we can do that. That's really what I'm going to cover, but it starts here at smart audio and control. So what am I talking about with these breakthroughs? Well, if you think about a courtroom, you've got your judge, the witness, maybe the clerk, you've got defense, prosecution, so on and so forth. How are they all going to hear each other? How are we going to capture that without creating all kinds of feedback or problems? Well, hands-free mode is what we developed so that the microphones are always on, but we want to create the best capture and listening experience. So there's 3 features that make up hands-free. We have the dynamic mix minus. So what does that mean? Well, that little loudspeaker that's on the device, it's always active. We need to be able to hear people. But you don't want to hear yourself coming back through that speaker because it'll cause feedback. It'll cause those squeals and squelches that really disrupt proceedings. So what we do is we remove your own voice from the speaker so that you could hear everybody else without being distracted or without creating that feedback issue. And then we have the gain sharing. So gain sharing just means that we are constantly monitoring the signal that's actually going through the microphone. And what we're doing is doing an automatic level control. You can imagine that person at the audio concert who's got that big board in front of them and they're moving the faders up and down. Well, we're just doing that automatically. And what it means is that as someone speaks quietly, we're going to automatically bring their volume up so that they're at a comfortable listening volume. And then if you get someone who's really loud, we're going to bring that volume down so that as people interact within the proceedings, you're going to be listening to them. You're going to be capturing their audio at an even level. And that's the gain sharing. And then the speech detection, this is handy for a couple different things. I'm going to talk later about connectivity with AI tools and recording tools and so on. We can label all the different devices that we have. So you could say, oh, this is the judge, this is the witness, and so on and so forth. Speech detection is just included metadata into what we're doing, which basically says this unit has activity. So you might imagine all the mics are open and they're active, but if I'm not speaking in front of one of the microphones, it's noting that there's no activity there. And if I start to speak, it will say, oh, my microphone now has activity. We're doing the gain sharing I talked about. I've got the dynamic mix minus at my speaker, but we're also including in the system that, oh, this microphone is now being used. that can be useful for a number of different things. It can be included in metadata that goes to AI tools for recording or transcriptions or so forth. So we can actually have the name or the label of the unit to go along with it. But we can also have that for camera switching. Again, not camera tracking. We're not going to have cameras move, but potentially you might have a shot of the judge, but then if, say, prosecution starts talking, you could switch to a different camera to show the prosecutor. And that's just all kinds of things that don't have to be used, but because we have that as part of the solution, it just provides more tools for these other systems to use within the space. Now, all those make up what we call hands-free, which is really great for a plug-and-play environment. I'll talk more about that. But we also have a DSP mode, which I'll speak to later. But I think smart audio control, think hands-free, think plug-and-play. It allows you to just put these units into the courtroom and be able to not only hear each other, but also break down individually all of the different signals that would be necessary for your recording, for your record, and so forth. So what I mean by all that is, it's that at-seat design. It really gives you the reliability and that discrete audio so that you can record and have your official record. Now, I keep saying record, we're recording. It's not that Televic is doing the recording. We work with a number of folks. I have a slide later to show all the partners that we work with, but we have certified with folks like For the Record, with Liberty, Be in Court, Wolf Vision for the hybrid aspects of it, Stenograph, Smart. There's so many. I have a slide later. But the idea is that we become that audio throughput so that you're handling those bigger challenges, which is making sure that we can hear everybody, whether they're in the room or not, and that all of those individual audio signals are going to recording. And then lastly is that because we're kind of automatically doing all that, there's very little operator intervention that's needed. So all that is kind of a set and forget. So it's very easy to deploy, set it up the one time, and then that can scale out to all the different courtrooms within a courthouse or even all the courthouses across a state. So I want to talk about the different ways that we can achieve this. So we really have two main pathways with these similar features. And I want to talk about kind of the pros and cons of each one and where we think each one of these pathways can be appropriate. So the first is the plug and play. This is really what I've been speaking towards mostly so far. And I think what's really important about the plug and play is understanding what its true value is, where it's really meant to be placed are these spaces where maybe today there's no technology at all. These are maybe small courtrooms, hearing rooms, arbitration spaces, really areas that are probably small enough that they didn't need any technology at all because you're just in a room, everybody can hear each other just fine. Maybe there's some microphones because you needed to record for the record, but there was no loudspeakers, there's no sound distribution. Maybe small devices got handed out in case of interpretation, or maybe interpretation wasn't even available. Oftentimes that's because budgets can be limited. Maybe you just have to make tough choices about where you're going to spend your budget, and maybe there just wasn't any left over for these rooms. So what the plug and play solution is, this is our D-Cerno model. That's the name of the unit there that you can see on the screen. This is just, again, the one device. It's got the stem, the loudspeaker. It has that hands-free mode, so the mic is always on. It has that headphone jack on the side, so you can bring interpretation to it if you need to. And these things just they connect over just regular network Cat5e shielded cable over to a device. I'll show you a diagram in a moment. but they just set on the table, one cable, maybe two if you want a daisy chain, between judge or witness or something like that. So it's very simple. There's really no installation other than setting it on the table, pulling some cables to the device, plugging them in. And then there's an operating platform. Just simply drop it in a hands-free mode and you're up and running. There's a USB-C cable that can go right into a PC that's running your recording software, like those that I was mentioning earlier. And again, we've worked with those companies, so we know that we're certified. We know that our audio routes cleanly to their services for recording or transcription. And it's just kind of, like it says, plug and play, and you're on and you're going forward. So this is a really powerful way to start saving on the budget and placing these devices into these rooms that maybe previously you weren't able to. Now they're hybrid ready because you've got that computer or laptop in there that's running your Teams or your Zoom or whatnot. And then you've got your recording software there as well. You've got all the audio back and forth between this system and that system over a USB cable. Very simple. But then you're going to have other courtrooms that have a lot more eyes on them, maybe controversial or kind of lots of press are going to be coming in. The public is probably going to be in these rooms more often. Maybe they're historic. They're just going to have a lot more focus. They're going to have more budget, and you want more granular control over what's happening with the audio. I mentioned before, with the plug and play, it's kind of just, set it, forget it. You don't need all these other additional tools. But in the bigger spaces, there might be more microphones. What's shown in the picture here is actually a state Supreme Court. So you have more justices. And you're going to have a traditional AV setup. You're going to have a DSP. You're going to have, amps and speakers and all kinds of stuff that we want to make sure that we're going that extra step. So we have systems that can be fully integrated. And this is where I want to talk about DSP mode. Again, this is all part of smart audio and control. This is all part of creating better understanding. It's all part of at-seat audio from Televic. But unlike the kind of plug and play, just easy peasy, here, because we're going to a much more granular control, we want someone with skill to be able to come in and use these additional tools that I'm talking about now. So DSP mode is, as it sounds, what we're doing is just basically taking all the processing, all the audio control, everything that we can do, and we're just gonna say, hey, you know what? We're just endpoints on your network, your audio network. You've got the microphone there. Great. That just goes right out as a Dante channel to your DSP. There's the loudspeaker that's on the device. Great. That's a receiving endpoint on that same Dante network. It's a channel that comes from your DSP to our speaker, just like it was any other speaker. You've got the headphone jacks. Now on this device I'm showing here, it's a FLEX device is the name of it. D-Cerno is plug and play. FLEX is this DSP mode. It's the integrated system. It has two headphone jacks, so you can actually share this one device for two people. But each of those headphones are also addressable on that Dante network. So the DSP can now connect to the microphone, the loudspeaker, and the two headphones. And it can create with its powerful set of tools. Again, those would be third-party folks like Q-SYS or Biamp or Extron. Again, all partners that we work with and have tested and verified our systems together. All of that, they now can have all those extra processing tools that they offer and can be applied to our at-seat audio. So you just have more tools. You can scale to larger quantity of microphones. The plug and play, it's really meant for 5 to 8, usually those smaller spaces. Here, again, with the history of our company, we can get into the hundreds and hundreds. We don't need to do that, but there's really not so much the limit. If you want to have that always active microphone, our limit would be 32. So again, more than enough to cover these larger courtrooms, these more prestigious spaces within the judicial system. And that's the difference. So plug and play is really just about set it out. It's in hands-free. It kind of handles itself. All the audio processing is internal. And then with the integrated system, it's saying, no, we're just going to be endpoints on your audio network, control everything with a DSP and a control system. We let the powerhouse handle it with all that extra ability. So the difference really then becomes, cost, scalability, and just the effort to install and get it set up. So what does it all look like? Well, over there to the side, you've got an equipment rack. It doesn't have to be in a separate equipment rack. There's actually just a small device. It's 1 RU. This is for us, we call it the engine. This is the connection point for all of our devices. So on that device, you would find your network connectivity so that you could remotely log into the device, check all of its settings. That's where the digital audio on the plug and play, it's AES67. And on the integrated system, it's just full on Dante, a Brooklyn 3 card. And that's the connectivity for digital audio as well. On the plug and play system, you have USB connections. So you can actually just have one cable to connect to the recording solution or where the Teams or Zoom would be. And then you have our connection points, which again are just network RJ45, and they can come out to our devices at the positions. So you can either daisy chain them or just run them as parallel connections. And then we do have, for example, in a plug and play environment, if you wanted to have some additional loudspeakers, we do have just normal analog XLR connections for outputs. We have 2 outputs. We also have 2 inputs in case you had a wireless handheld or something like that. You wanted to bring that into our system, you can do that as well. So this is just very simple connectivity, and it all just goes back to our one, we call it an engine. So I've talked a lot about the ideas, the concepts. We're addressing the challenges. This is how we address the challenges. But I wanted to talk really about a specific use case. So we've done a number of courts, but this one, it was kind of like right as I was coming on board. So I really like this one. It's Ellis County Courthouse. It's nearby to where I live as things go. And I think it's a nice example of taking these concepts, these ideas, and actually executing on them and seeing how they handled it. So for Ellis County, it's this beautiful courthouse, extremely historic. They had to absolutely make sure that the technology that they were going to bring into the space would not impact the aesthetics, but of course had to solve the problem. So audio issues, they were very difficult to hear one another. And just like I said, as they moved to a hybrid environment, they had no way to be able to hear the remote participants. Listening was really the critical challenge. So they had microphones, they could capture what people were saying for the recording, for the official record, but no one could really hear. And the control was very inconsistent from courtroom to courtroom. The judges often complained that, if you went from one courtroom to another courtroom, the way that the courtroom operated was very different. So that was just one of the components that we were able to play a part of. And then even if you had the technology being equal, the clerks or court reporters, that were coming in, they kind of wanted to manage things a little bit differently, with the judges. So it had to be not only, I've been talking about this hands-free mode the whole time, but honestly, sometimes they don't. A judge doesn't want the microphone to always be on. There's no, we are okay with people muting and unmuting their microphones. Again, different preferences within the same space for just depending on who was coming in and presiding. So how can you handle all those things? Well, they selected Televic for our at-sea audio design because we could handle all those. We replaced the outdated analog microphones. So there was all these cables running everywhere. We were able to take our loudspeaker and really solve for that poor listening experience that they had prior to this change. That little loudspeaker, then all of a sudden, the judge could hear what people were saying. The prosecution was able to hear what the witnesses were saying. All of a sudden, whether they're in the room or remote, everybody could hear clearly, and we were creating better understanding. And that was the whole goal. But then there's those extra pieces, and the reason why they went with the more integrated solution, this is the FLEX that we're looking at, is because depending, again, on who was coming in and presiding over the courtroom that day, they wanted to be able to say, okay, yeah, we want the mics to all be on, and then, they're handling the control with the DSP, or they say, no, you know what, it's okay. Put it in a mute, unmute setup where the person can toggle it on for themselves. And obviously that's because of privileged conversation or sidebars or all these kinds of things, all these different components of a proceeding. They just said, oh yeah, either I like it this way or I like it that way. And for us, for Televic, that's just a setting that can be triggered through a control system. So you can have a nice panel and just do a scene recall. So that flexibility on how to use the Televic system without, special coding or critical setup changes, that meant that it fixed this challenge that they were facing where they couldn't get all the judges and everybody to agree like, okay, this courthouse operates this way. No, they had differences of opinions on how it should be used. And this was flexible to meet the individual requirements on how they were working. So even though the whole presentation so far, I've been really excited about hands-free and I've been very excited about the DSP mode, note that you're not locked in one or the other. It's really just about how do you want to use the system. Okay, now I'm going to transition over. I want to talk about something that's fairly new for us. This is only within the past, say, year and a half. And it has a lot to do with kind of two areas. One is something that we're very experienced in. It's really the roots of what we do, which is the interpretation. And then also something that's fairly new, which is the interaction, again, not through us, but through partners, which are these large language models, these AI interpretation. Now, as soon as I say that, AI interpretation, there could be a number of different reactions that are happening on the other side of the screen here for all of you. I want you to know right up front that everything I'm about to talk about could be a human interpreter, could be a speech-to-text translation or transcription through a person or an AI, could be speech-to-speech with an AI. For us, what's critical is whether you're focusing on human or machine is that both need the highest quality audio clarity, the highest audio intelligibility to be able to, I'm going to use the word hear or just ingest what's being said so that whatever the role is of the person or the device, they can execute it to the best of their ability. So that's my preface. But what are we looking at? On the screen is a new product from us, which is Unite. And this has been working very well. It's got a lot of attention because it's really solving three things. There is the need for wireless presentation. I'm standing up, I'm in the well, I need to move about. I'm an attorney who wants to stand up and move around as I talk. I'm not sitting in front of one of the tabletop at-seat audio devices that we had earlier in the presentation. So how am I capturing that? Well, you've got a handheld device, or you have a belt pack, body pack that you can then have a lavalier. So that would capture what's being said as I'm moving around. But then you also have assisted listening. So you have your ADA compliance where someone comes into the courtroom, they're hard of hearing, you can hand one of these receiver packs. So not one that a microphone connects into, but one that is just receiving only. Same system, just a different device. Hand that to them with a headset or a neck loop or any of the other accessories for assisted listening. And now you've met that requirement as well. So that's 2. The third is what I'm talking about with the interpretation. Because these systems will handle multiple channels. So the assisted listening could just be the English. Okay, maybe that's channel 1, but then channel 2 might be Spanish or Korean or French or Vietnamese or Japanese or who knows. It can be set to put an extra language channel that is being fed, again, whether it's a person or it's a machine, that's coming through the Dante signal routes, through this system, and then out to the people who need it. So this is really important because it's handling all 3 of those aspects. So again, you might think of the courtroom like, okay, I've got the person who's speaking in the well, he's standing up and moving around. You have the people who are in the gallery of the public, whether it's English that they need to hear or they need to hear another language, they've got that ability because we're wirelessly transmitting this. Again, when we go wireless, there's certain things we need to consider. So we can organize all the channel frequencies so that you have multiple courtrooms near each other. We can program each of the rooms to be on its own frequency so we're not getting overlap. If security is a concern, we have over half of the available channels are 256 military encrypted. So you can have security in the sense that even if the frequencies are going beyond the wall, you're not able to understand what's being said. Only the receivers with the same encryption can decrypt that and be able to pass the audio on. But it's very handy in the sense that if I'm speaking in the room, the other people will be able to hear me, but I can also connect these devices, again, either with an interpreter who's in the room, who's just using one of the devices to then speak back in another language, or if it's going to a computer, again, I believe I forgot to mention there's a USB-C connection on the device, again, it goes right into the computer. So whether there's an interpreter, a human interpreter on the other end, or it's a AI interpretation, that's just the one connection, bi-directional, just like a headset. And then that audio from the courtroom goes to that interpreter, the interpreted language comes back through, and then is on that other channel for the folks who need it. So it's really powerful. We're kind of making developments all the time, but this is something that we're very excited about because it's opening up a new way to handle these 3 requirements within a courtroom, but with just one system. So if you want to know more, please do reach out to us. Ask questions in the chat. Make sure you fill out the survey. We'd love to kind of hear more about what you think about this. So as we get close to finishing, I do just want to call out the partners. I mentioned this throughout the presentation. Again, we want to focus on what makes us best, which is the intelligible audio, which is creating better understanding. There are a number of folks out there that handle what they do best. So for whether it's recording systems or creating that hybrid experience or evidence, or it's the DSP really just managing the processing of that audio, just enhancing that audio, routing the audio. We work with, and there's more too, but these are some of the critical partners that we have. We've tested our systems together. We stand behind each other's product. So if you're already a customer of one of these organizations, one of these solution providers, do know that we work closely with them and we trust our systems working together. So just to wrap up, these audio challenges that are in the courtroom, if there's audio failures, it's a risk to the proceedings. It's a disruption. It takes extra time. That's extra cost. But if there's even just poor intelligibility, that's a risk to the record. And of course that, could lead to all kinds of nasty things, but we want to make sure that the record is pristine and it's defensible. And then the complex systems, if you add the complexity, you're really adding a risk to the longevity, and fairly simply put, just the budget. As things get more complex, they tend to become more expensive. And then as you try to get into that refresh, you combine those two, a shortened longevity and a higher cost. That means you're having to turn over more, but it's going to cost you more each time. So these major challenges, this is what we're trying to fight against by using Televic for the courtrooms. Again, it's not just a better microphone, it's the better audio foundation for justice. So I want to thank you for your time. Please do fill out that survey, and thank you for joining us.